On behalf of our organization and our partners at Xperitas, we'd like to welcome you to our informational webinar for our Credit Abroad program. We have lots of information to share with you this evening, but before we get started, just a couple of quick notes. As you can see on the welcome screen here, when you're not actively speaking, we would ask that you mute your microphone, cut down on background noise for everyone. And also, we are recording this evening's webinar so that those who are unable to join can hear this information later. We have prepared a few of the most common questions that we get regarding our credit and credit abroad program, and we'll be addressing those. However, you certainly will have the opportunity to ask specific questions that you may have during this hour webinar. And then depending on the platform you're using, you may have access to a chat box. You're certainly welcome to ask questions via the chat box as well, and we will address those questions as they come up. All right, so with that, we'll get started. Pardon me. As you can see here at the bottom of the welcome screen, we are going to be referencing our website quite a bit. The easiest way is going to be go to just the first part of it, which is concordialanguagevillages.org. And that's what you see here. If you were to go to the magnifying glass and search credit, that will take you to our credit pages. And so we'll start here. So the first question is, what is a credit program? For those who are not familiar with Concordia Language Villages, we offer programs of several different lengths, 1 week, 2 week, and 4 week programs. Our 4 week program is for students in grades 9 through 12, and they spend 4 weeks with us in any one of our 14 language programs, and they have the opportunity to earn 1 year's worth of high school credit. What you'll notice that is different for our high school credit abroad program is that students need to be between ages of 16 and 18. So it is a little bit older, a little bit narrower of an age range for our abroad program. Another common question is, how can I earn a whole year of high school credit in just 1 month? For most states in the U.S., 1 year's worth of study of any subject is 180, that's 180 hours of study. At Concordia Language Villages, in all of our credit programs, both U.S.-based as well as abroad, we meet or exceed those 180 hours, which will be a combination, of the language classes that you'll be taking, but as well, you earn credit for participating in sports activities, cultural activities, because they are conducted in the target language. You get credit for meals because you're eating food that is authentic to the cultures that you're studying, as well as during meal times you're speaking in the language, so you're practicing conversation, getting to learn or getting to practice all that vocabulary and grammar that you studied in class, perhaps. And then each of our villages also has what's called an evening program after supper each day, and those evening programs are focused on a variety of cultural activities. Oftentimes they are simulations of historical or current events, and so that's another way that you're studying the culture of that language. So that's how we get to easily 180 hours for credit. Okay. Another question that we often get is, how much language do I need to speak already to join your credit program? And for our programs that are U.S. only, you do not need to have any language experience coming into the program. The villagers, as we call them, who participate in each of our high school credit sessions, undergo a placement process in the first day or so in the program, and we certainly have villagers that represent the range from absolute beginners in the target language all the way through advanced learners, and then you are grouped into small classes of villagers who have approximately your level of experience. Pardon me. The caveat I would say here is that for our abroad programs in French, Spanish, and German, we do have a previous language requirement, and that is at least the equivalent of 1 year of former study of the language that you're signing up for, either French, German, or Spanish. All right. Another question that we have anticipated is, what is the overall schedule for the abroad program. And so if you're following along with me on your website at home, you can just click the High School Credit Abroad button, and hopefully this will come up in a second. And you'll get some more specific information about the abroad program versus the high school credit program in general. And so again, regardless of whether you're interested in German, Spanish, or French, you can gain more you can get more information here. We're going to go to, pardon me, we're going to go to one of our programs so that you can get a sense of what 4-week schedule is like. Well, let's do this differently. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You can click on the get more information and it goes to the next page.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Charlotte. That's very helpful. There we go.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so we'll also talk about dates a little bit as well. So if you are interested in our German abroad or French abroad programs, those dates are here on the screen now. Those are July 3 through July 30th. And then for our Spanish credit abroad, the dates are July 10th through August 6th. In all three programs, the first 2 weeks are going to be based in Minnesota, and then the second 2 weeks are abroad. For, pardon me, and we'll come to that in just a little bit. To give you an overall sense, though, of what the month looks like, we're going to take a look at our French language program here near Hackensack, Minnesota. And you can see that information here. So for the, again, for the first 2 weeks, each of these programs will be in Minnesota. For our German language program, that's at our German language site, Balsay, near Bemidji, Minnesota. For Spanish, it's near the town of Cass Lake. And for our French language program, it's near the town of Hackensack. So for the first 2 weeks of the program, you would be living in the language village in Minnesota, taking language classes, living with other kids in cabins, eating culturally authentic meals, participating in sports, all the things we already talked about. And then at the end of the second week, then you'll travel by bus to Minneapolis for your flight to your international destination for the last 2 weeks, and then return to Minneapolis for your flight home. And we'll get some of the travel information a little bit later as well. Okay. The last question that I'm going to present before I open it for questions and then turn the rest of it over to my colleagues is, what is a daily schedule like? So I want to show you a sample from our Spanish language program. Just click on school credit. And you can see a typical schedule here, in the sense that in all of our language villages, and this would be true for the first 2 weeks of your credit abroad program while you're in Minnesota, there's typically a brief activity before breakfast. So it might be a flag raising, it might be short exercises, depending on what it is, and your language village. There's breakfast, and then typically there's a time to clean the cabin. There'll be a combination of large group language learning activities, small language group classes, cultural activities, sports activities. The middle of the day, there is lunch, typically followed by a siesta in this case for our Spanish language village, or other quiet or rest time in the village. Part of the afternoon, there's also a free time period where you have the opportunity to go to our village bank, take out euros or yen or rubles, whatever the currency is of the culture that you're studying. Go to the kiosk and get a soda pop, some candy. You can go buy souvenirs from the gift shop, All of that, of course, is conducted in the language. And then we have supper and an evening program, as I mentioned earlier. One of the differences between our 4-week credit program and our other programs is that our credit programs also have some form of directed study or study hall as part of their daily schedule, so the students have an opportunity to have a focused part of the day when they can really know is dedicated to studying. Okay. Are there any questions that I can address before I turn this over to my colleagues? Okay. Again, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them, or you can type them into the chat box. I see a comment that I've been cutting in and out, so I do apologize for that. We'll try and speak up a little bit louder. Perhaps that will help. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Charlotte, who is also Group Director with Concordia Language Villages, and she's going to tell you a bit more about the abroad portion of our program.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Charlotte. Can you hear me?
I can.
Do cut out. I'm going to leave the chat box open and watch for that notice, but I'm going to go forth. Kenji described the schedule of the 2 weeks while they're in Minnesota, and the important part for the credit program piece of that are the classes. When they finish the 2 weeks, they will have arrived at the point which might be equivalent to a midterm, or it's a pause where they get to share all that they've learned so far. It's going to be a culmination of language practice and learning. There's going to be some creative projects that will involve oral presentations, some writing, some reflecting. And I know that during those first 2 weeks, the credit curriculum for the Credit Abroad Villagers is going to focus on their family stay communication, and that's important for you to know, as well as some research into the destinations of the excursions that they're going to get to go on. So it's going to have some components of technology. When they arrive in Minnesota, they're going to find out who their families are that they're going to be paired with when they're abroad, and they'll begin that communication together in class with Skyping and with other forms of communication. So that'll be part of their learning while they're in Minnesota. They're going to have 2 teachers that are their lead staff, but again, when they're in Minnesota, they're part of the language village, so they will be getting to know all the rest of the immersion village staff and counselors and villagers who are in session at the same time. But the 2 Credit Abroad staff members are going to be going with them down to Minneapolis to get ready for their flight abroad, and they're going to be leading them the entire way. So I thought I'd address supervision at this point. Some parents have written in with questions in advance, and that was one of the questions. How are they supervised while abroad? And basically it's going to be similar to the supervision that occurs while they're with us in Minnesota. They're going to know these 2 leaders very well. It's going to be a small class of 10 to 12 students, and at all times they will be with one or both of the staff members. So at the end of 2 weeks, they go down to Minneapolis and get ready for their flight abroad. They'll probably have a class or some downtime together. They're going to be able to do laundry after those first 2 weeks and get ready for their trip. And then when they're in France or Germany or Costa Rica, they will be with those teachers and then transfer to the family stay. So they're always with a staff member. The staff members are going to be staying nearby while they're with their families, the host families, and they're going to have regular check-ins. They're also going to be getting together for classes occasionally. Each itinerary varies slightly, so those class times are going to be at various intervals depending on which of the 3 programs you're in. But they are going to meet for class during the family stay times. They're going to have some assignments. It's going to involve interaction with the host family, so a lot of it's going to seem organic and what they want to be doing anyway. and that is interacting and learning from and having fun with their host families. So the schedule of the abroad program includes, as I've mentioned, some excursions, nights with a family and host family during the day as well, and then excursions together and classes together. We could look at the itineraries if Kenji wants to. Let's see. Kenji, can you show one of the abroad itineraries?
Yep, I'll pull that up.
Okay. We're going to look at the itineraries briefly, and then we'll go further into how the families are chosen for our host families and what those family stay times involve. Here we have the Costa Rica schedule. And you see there's a variety of excursions. We have a service project that will involve visiting the Sea Turtle Conservancy Center. Going to be quite a few fun things involved in that, and they go to their families for, I believe that's 6 nights. So every family stay is going to last about between 4 and 7 nights depending on the itinerary. But in each of these, the 2 credit abroad staff will be with that group of students. So they'll be picking them up from the host families and then going to the excursions together, having class times, and then they'll go back to their stay. The lodging when they are not with host families varies. Some are going to be in hotels that our Experitas staff have arranged for them. And I'm going to, let's see, first ask you if there are any questions so far about what the credit abroad schedule involves in terms of classes and supervision. And I'll pause a moment to see if you have any questions about that. Okay. Then I will now pass the microphone to either Rachel or Hans of Experitas to talk a bit about family stays and how do we choose those host families and what does that family stay time involve.
Hi, so this is Rachel Cagle, and I'm the Senior Program Manager with Experitas, and I also do the French program, so I'm very well versed in anything related to the French programs, but I've also been here a while, so I know the Costa Rica and German family stays as well. So we contract with family stay coordinators in our various countries, and they're people who often have worked with us for a long time, and they might have a background in teaching themselves, or they just know the community very well. And they're kind of an extension of us, and we rely on them to vet the families, and they use references and a home visit as well as working through the local schools. All of our host families in Germany and France are volunteers. So we know that they're people who are really interested in sharing this intercultural experience. In Costa Rica, the families are pretty much also volunteers, but they are paid a small food stipend, which just ensures that they are able to adequately provide for the students, that everyone has enough to eat. Everyone is provided with room and board, so all meals at home are included. And everyone is required to have their own bed, although they might share a room with a host sibling of the same gender. Usually there, especially in France and Germany, there will be a student of around the same age. We usually say within 1 to 3 years of age difference, and in Costa Rica that's usually the case, although it's not guaranteed. But if there is no student in the household, then the family knows that they're required to find another family for the student to kind of get to know a student of their own, a child of their own age. Any questions about family stays in any of the countries? Anything else you wanted me to go over, Charlotte?
Well, let's see. You could talk a bit more about the itineraries and the what's included in terms of the, I suppose, the transportation types and this transfers and how we. That's a broad question, but if you want to talk a bit more about the various excursions and how those work.
Okay, sure. So, well, it's kind of an all-inclusive program, so all the land a lot of private coach bus excursions, and there's also a guide included with the Costa Rican program. In the French and German programs, the leaders serve mostly as the guide, although they do have all the transportation that they need. They have a transfer to the hotel. And then in France, there's actually a second family stay. The French program is actually France and Belgium. So they arrive Paris, and then they have the family stay. They go to Évreux, which is in Normandy. So they have an excursion to see the D-Day beaches, which is just some fantastic history for the kids to learn about. They do have some time in Paris with their teacher at a hotel in Paris, and then they take a train over to Belgium, and they'll actually be, the second family stay is near Warem in Belgium, and they have really interesting activities at a castle near Warem. So during the day, the families will drive them to and from this castle, where they'll have excursion or activities with the group leader. And then in Germany, do you want to bring that one up? I'm less familiar with that itinerary.
The German, go ahead, sorry?
No, go ahead. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen.
Yeah, so the German program goes into Berlin, and we'll be staying there and doing some interaction with different activities throughout the Berlin program. And then they will head off and stay near Dresden in a small village during their family stay, and then visit Dresden to give them a kind of a Eastern German experience. And so their family stay will be shorter outside of the area of Dresden. So they're similar to kind of Belgium and France, or not similar. So Belgium and France involves two different family stays in two different countries and areas, where the German one is just in one area in the village outside of Dresden. So, and there's a really neat, they're categorized as a hostel, but it's called the Generator. It's a really big chain throughout Europe, the hotel, kind of a cool, hip location in Berlin that will give them a cool aspect of Germany through that kind of experience as well. So that is it with the family stay in France, Belgium, and Germany.
Great. Thanks, Hans. There's a question in the chat box. Someone asked, is it one child per family in France?
Oh, yes, absolutely it is. And I think it's like that in all of our all of our locations. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's just, you're not in the language if you're placed with another student, so it's just to make sure that there is true immersion going on. It's too easy to chat with your friend otherwise.
So there's a related question, I believe, from another participant. How many kids per house in Costa Rica? So that would also be one then?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Great. And then there was also a question earlier that might be of interest to other folks as well. And the question was, is there a cost for students to go from Cass Lake, which is the site for the first 2 weeks of the Spanish Abroad program, to Minneapolis? So as a family, you're responsible for transportation from home to the location in Minnesota, Cass Lake for Spanish, Bemidji for German, Hackensack for French. But then the tuition price includes the ground transfer from Cass Lake, Hackensack, or Bemidji to Minneapolis. And then you are then be again responsible for the transportation from Minneapolis back to home.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlotte, are you requiring them to complete their like family stay letter and photos while they're at camp?
Following that acceptance. So when you get your welcome letter, it'll say, now you're going to go onto the Experitas website and fill out a student profile. And that's where you'll give all your information to Experitas for their coordinators to match you with their families.
Perfect. So just when people do that, make sure that's kind of your outlet to explain, what you hope that the family would know about you so that we can match the students with, a family who might share their interests or just who we think would be a good fit. That's kind of like your outlet to do that.
Mm-hmm. We've just gotten a question that asks, can we see the kids before they're transferred to the airport if we live in Minnesota? As we are a camp program, we of course stay with our staff, and it's are not open to the public during the session. They go to Minneapolis to leave for their trip abroad. So families are welcome to come to that day and join us for International Day. It's a whole afternoon in Bemidji at the German Language Village. It's a lot of fun. It's a big festival, and you can visit with your villager at that point. So that's one way to connect. They also, as you know, their cell phones are taken away at the border when they arrive in Minnesota. That's part of our camp experience in most camps these days. So during that 2 weeks, you're hearing from the staff. If there's a question, you can connect with the village director and staff, and you'll be seeing blog posts daily from the language villages. After the 2 weeks are over, when they get to do their laundry and get ready for the transfer down to Minneapolis to leave and go abroad, they will get their cell phones back, and they'll be able to call home and check in with you and catch up. So one nice thing is our blogs are going to continue as they go abroad. They're going to post photos at least every other day. We're going to shoot for every day if they have great connectivity, but you're going to be able to see a blog, hopefully daily, of their trip abroad. So that'll be one way of knowing what's happening. I'll go ahead and answer the next one too. When will the kids know who their families are? They're going to find that on the first day they get to the village in Minnesota. So Experitas is going to match our villagers to families abroad and send all of the information to our credit abroad facilitators or our program directors, and that's when they get to begin communication with those families.
Great. There's another question that says, my child takes medication. Do you anticipate that this might cause a problem entering Costa Rica or otherwise? Maybe I'll ask Rachel or Hans to address that question.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, did you hear the medication question?
Yes, I did. So we should know, with the application process, we'll get kind of passed on the information about medication, and depending on what the issue is and what the needs are, we may or may not ask for more information. It's very important that the host family be aware if they need to be. And in some cases, it's just, hey, be aware that my child takes medication, so don't freak out. And I will definitely, me and the other program managers will let the host families know what to expect. We've really seen it all, so as long as we know about it, then we can definitely make it happen.
There's a question that says, will on them during that travel weekend? when they
No,
are
I'm
with...
sorry. You cut out for a second, at least for me. Could you repeat the question again, please?
Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know. The question is, will the kids have their cell phones while abroad? So they will have the choice of having a cell phone while abroad. Again, they're going to be with the group at all times. When they're with the families have the numbers for emergencies to reach both the Experitas staff in country and our 2 teachers who will be staying very close nearby. You will also receive all of the emergency numbers to be able to reach directors here in Minnesota as well. Simply because of the need to interact together, to be and take photos. We're thinking right now that might be in the form of an iPad or something else that's creatively accessible for those kinds of projects. But they will have their cell phones. We're going to discourage this again, but for emergency purposes, that is going to be possible. And then, of course, CLV will not, Concordia and Experitas won't be responsible for roaming charges or any other kind of expenses that a cell phone might incur. But you'll have all the numbers available for you to reach us if you need to. Okay, there's a question in past, let's see, do you have emergency plans for evacuation set in place in case of a global terrorism event?
So I'll take that one over. Of course, you know, our staff here at Experitas is kind of always watching. We watch the State Department. We watch for, you know, travel warnings. And last year there was an alert. There was never a warning with all the, you know, emergency phone. The leaders will be there. Experitas also has an on-call emergency phone. So we need to be involved whenever anything would happen. We need to be in touch with the teachers, so we'd be working with them. We've got a lot of people on site, a lot of vendors and partners that we work with in, well, all over France, but in Paris especially. And in Belgium, of course, we have staff there actually. So we would just kind of group forces, and we also have our air manager who works with us. You know, there has, in the past, we've never, you know, dealt with a big global event, but we do a lot of contacts that we can make in case of an emergency event. And as Hans just reminded me, there's actually a warning against, warning versus alert. There's actually an alert from France on the U.S. right now. I don't know if you guys knew that. So it's just, it's really arbitrary what they decide to be an alert versus a warning. A warning is much more serious. And there has never been a warning since I've been here on any of the countries that you guys are traveling to.
Okay.
I'm confident that should there need to be an evacuation, that we'll have staff on the ground that are communicating with our leadership staff, and they'll sequester them. Kenji, do you see the question on portfolios? Do you want to take that?
Absolutely. So the question is, in past years, my child has made a portfolio as their final project. Will they still be doing this? So the specifics regarding a portfolio would be made within the program, but in general, yes, across all of our programs for credit, and that would include our high school credit abroad program, villagers compose what is called a portfolio, so samples of their work from all different language modalities, different cultural areas, so that their assessment is not just based on, for example, test scores, but so that their assessment represents all forms of learning. So that there would be a portfolio. That would be our expectation. I think there's also another question. Here we go. Is it a direct flight? So I think the question for Rachel and Hans is it a direct flight from Minneapolis, St. Paul to the three countries?
So I'm pretty sure that there's no direct flight from Minneapolis to Berlin. I don't think so. There would be a change there. I'm pretty sure you have to stop in somewhere on the way to Costa Rica. Paris, Minneapolis, Paris right now is a direct flight, but since it's so far out, it's still possible that like they would if they don't sell the entire flight, then they cancel their direct flight and then they would like rebook us on a layover. So as of right now, the Minneapolis-Paris one is direct, but then they come back from Brussels and there's no direct flight from Brussels to Minneapolis. So no, not direct, but we do have a one layover flight for all locations.
Mm-hmm. The next question is, does the price include travel insurance or do we purchase that separately? You'll see on the terms and conditions that there are several options for travel insurance that we offer. So there is a basic insurance that's included, and I'll let Rachel speak to the kind of insurance that's included in the price. And then know that Concordia also offers a travel insurance above that. So you can, and I can send you the information, but it's part of our terms and conditions.
Yeah, so we have insurance that's part of our program cost, and it covers up to $50,000, and the deductible is $250. So the kids all will have a travel insurance card that they can print out before they go, and they carry with them at all times. A lot of times, at least in France and Germany, even if you went to a clinic, it wouldn't even meet the deductible of $250 because they've got great health care over there. They might even, even an ambulance ride might not hit that. So they wouldn't have to do a claim unless it hit that deductible, obviously. I know less about the health care in Costa Rica, but in the past, I know that most of the medical cases that happen while abroad, make sure you have carry that insurance card on you, because if you did have to pay for something, it would have to come out of the kid's pocket who's traveling, because there's no way that we can reimburse a teacher or the family safety coordinator or a host family if something were to happen. But yes, we do have that insurance. And then do you want to talk about your optional ones?
The travel insurance you can purchase at different levels, and I know the ultimate level allows you to cancel up to a certain date. So you can read the details of that, or you could email me and I can send you the details of that, more specifics.
And we also have, there's a cancellation insurance due to medical, so if a kid broke their leg at camp, which would never happen. If it happened right before, I think it's 30 days before departure, if something new happens, it can't be a pre-existing condition, but they would get up to $1,000 of a refund, which is, and we might be able to get them an air voucher as well, or do something with the air credit.
Great. Are there any other questions we can address this evening? Let's see if questions have popped up here. What does it say? It says, are there any special immunizations recommended for visitors to Costa Rica? I hate to bring it up, but has the Zika virus appeared in the areas students would be visiting?
So I guess I, again, don't work personally with Costa Rica. I know that people have had questions about Zika. I think that there have been some cases found there, but no more than have been found in the U.S., in Miami and such, where there have been cases. And it only, affects people who are trying to get pregnant. So a lot of the groups traveling there haven't been worried, because the kids who travel there hopefully aren't thinking about getting pregnant anytime soon. Yeah, so it hasn't really been an issue. We have a lot of groups going to Costa Rica every year.
There's a lost audio there. All right, sorry, pause. If you do have additional questions, you can contact us by phone at 1-800-222-4750 or email us at clv@cord.edu. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining.